Catch up on what you missed or hear it again. This is the best of the regulars on Talk Sports Radio, Extra 90.5.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the Midas touch.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
There he is, Mr. Goldfinger. What's going on? How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
I'm doing very good, thank you.
Hi, Brian.
I'm curious, what's on the Brian Goldfinger iPod?
What's on my iPod?
Yeah, like what kind of music do you listen to?
What type of music? I like Pearl Jam. I like Grateful Dead. I like Fish. I like hip hop. I like a lot of things.
You like hip hop?
I do. Yeah. But I like older hip hop, not kind of the newer hip hop. I can't really follow because like the lyrics are all kind of auto tuned. You know what I mean? So Future, he's got a few good songs, but I really don't know what he's saying. I like it a bit older, like 90s hip hop. I like Tribe. I love Beastie Boys.
Oh, Beastie Boys. I like Beastie Boys.
I like De La Soul. Yeah.
Little Warren G.
And it's funny because when I look at Brian, I see a lot of ska. I don't know why. It just kind of jumps out at me.
Yeah, kind of something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Bit
good.
of jazz, Medeski, Martin Wood.
I was going to say, a little jazz.
English beat, the specials. You know, I don't know.
You know, Brian, I feel like that's why we get along too. I was a big, growing up when I did, I mean, everyone who's anyone, it was Eminem and it was Dr. Dre and it was Snoop Dogg. And but I work with people who are, 5, 6, 7 years older and they don't quite grasp the fact that in high school, I mean, that was the go-to music that everybody was listening to.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of country, I think, is what most, high school students kind of do, kind of trendy or whatever. I noticed you didn't mention any Garth Brooks or anything.
No,
on your,
I'm not.
playlist.
I'm not so into country. No, I'm not. I've never really liked country.
I'm liking this guy more and more. I'm telling you.
I get it, but I don't get it. The lyrics are a bit depressing for me, and I kind of understand the new age country. It's more like rock and roll, and they say rock and roll is dead. Well, it's just been kind of replaced by country. But again, the lyrics, I'm not feeling as much, and I don't know. I'm not into country.
You did mention Pearl Jam, though, so kind of the Seattle sound sort of thing, too?
No, just I like Pearl Jam. Well, Seattle sound, who else is there? There's...
was it Nirvana?
No. Soundgarden. I like Soundgarden, yeah. And they were on tour a while ago. And I was seeing up on your ticker, I like Matthew Good. He's a Canadian artist, and he recently collapsed on stage
little
as a
episode
ticker.
last night.
Yeah, last night. Apparently pneumonia. Like he was fighting through it to give a concert, and... he ended up collapsing, but it sounds like he's going to be okay.
I remember
like Matthew Good.
Going to a few Matthew Good shows in my time. I liked him. Yeah.
Foo Fighters?
Love Foo Fighters. How can't you love Foo Fighters?
Exactly.
Dave Grohl, he's fantastic.
Yeah, I love the Foo Fighters, yeah. What's your favorite concert you ever been to?
Favorite concert? Oh, easy. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Detroit, Michigan. It was an amazing show. They put on an amazing live concert. I've seen them at the ACC twice. I've seen them in Michigan twice or 3 times. They put on a great live concert.
I like the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
And you know what's surprising? I'll tell you something. With my ex-girlfriend, she said, let's go to John Mayer. I didn't want to see John Mayer. I saw John Mayer live at in Toronto. What is it? At the amphitheater.
Okay, yeah.
He put on an amazing live concert. He was such a talented musician, and you're giving me a look like, really?
No, hey.
I'm telling you, he tours with the Grateful Dead right now with like a Grateful Dead band. He is a fantastic guitarist.
He's a heavyweight, sure.
Yeah.
Since we were making confessions, one of my favorite kind of songs that you never admit that you really like, is Your Body is a Wonderland. I always thought that was actually kind of a catchy song. It's one of those ones that if it comes on the iPod in the car and then I have friends over, I'm like, wow, that's just my wife's, like no big deal, but it's really mine.
What's your favorite band show you've ever been to?
The best show I've ever been to, I saw Bruce Springsteen at the Sky Dome.
Great show. Always.
Perfect August night, my 23rd birthday. The roof open, just everything added up for that.
Perfect.
That was great. That was the best one. What about you? Probably Elton John.
No, surprisingly, and that's a good assumption because I've seen him so many times and he's wonderful. But I saw them twice in the late 70s and early 80s. The Clash.
Oh, nice. Nice pull.
Absolutely
awesome.
incredible.
Yeah.
And I almost feel blessed because they really had a short shelf life
to
tour. But Joe Strummer, and he's such a talent. And but the one unheralded show I saw at the concert hall in Toronto, again, late 70s, was Wendy O. Williams and the Plasmatics.
I've never heard of them.
You're dating yourself for me and Brian here.
It was punk rock, and she had a habit. She had a habit of wearing whipped cream on stage.
Oh, I see.
Okay, all right.
That's it.
You're right, whipped cream. Yeah,
that was it.
Sounds like an 18+ show.
Yeah,
It wasn't 18, but you know what? It was a memorable night for all the
we're not
wrong
going to
reasons.
dig back into your days there, Paul. That's very interesting.
It was pretty, but the Clash is the big one.
That's a good
It's a
pick.
good show.
Brian Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. I want to know about the biggest mistakes that people make after getting into car accidents. But first, the Raptors. We all know you're a huge Raptors fan, like we all are. They had a nice win last night, held off a hungry opponent, and we were just kind of talking off air, it's kind of difficult when you're in front. I know Boston's still in the periphery, right? 3 games back, 7 games to go. But it's difficult when you're taking on teams like Denver. They can kind of catch you off guard a little bit.
It's just hard playing in the month of March against really desperate teams when you're sort of on cruise control. Let's look back at month of March statistics. I think Ben Uzo had a triple-double in the month of March for the Toronto Raptors a long time ago. I think
That's a name drop.
I think Daniel Marshall hit like 23s for the Raptors in the month of March. So you have desperate players, desperate coaches, people playing for their next contracts, and you have other teams that are in cruise control. And the Raptors' schedule of late, they play something like 12 games and 14 or 15 nights. I'm exhausted just watching the game. I can only imagine how these guys are. So I'm feeling kind of optimistic that they have a nice break between now and when they play Boston on Saturday. And I think their lax play over the late can be attributed more towards the Ides of March rather than and their schedule rather than the team being not so good.
Maybe one takeaway from last night's game in particular, riding the bench down the stretch, and I thought they accounted themselves really, really well.
Yeah, I thought they played the bench is where you need that energy, and they got it. The funniest thing was Jakob Poeltl. We were talking about it off air. He had 4 fouls in 7 minutes. That is really, really difficult to do, getting 4 fouls in 7 minutes, considering your team probably had the ball for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. But then he came in the fourth quarter, and he played gangbusters. He was a monster.
Yeah, definitely. His nose always seems to be in the action. That's for sure. Jamal Murray, he didn't play very, very good, but he's having a good season out there in Denver.
He's having a great year. And the problem with the Raptors, I'm going to tell you, there's always like a comeback home game. So any Canadian, Trey Lyles last night is a good example.
Yes.
He had a huge game off the bench. I think he had like 14 points in 13 minutes, didn't miss a shot. He was phenomenal. So you have these games against random Canadians who come. They got a lot of friends and family in town, and they always put up big numbers.
Yeah, definitely. One quick one here, too. The Blue Jays. Are you optimistic this year?
No, they're going to be brutal.
No.
Another third. Well, they can't beat Boston.
Tell it like it is, Brian.
They can't. I said it last year. You asked me, how are the Jays going to be? And last year they were brutal, and this year they're going to be brutal again.
I hate when he's right.
Yeah. So they're not going to beat Boston. They're not going to beat New York. And no matter what, if Tampa is good or bad, they can't beat Tampa. They can't beat Tampa.
Oh, they couldn't beat him when they have a good team.
That's right.
Yeah,
they can't beat Tampa.
never beat Tampa.
So in the AL East, you're chalking up all these L's, and they're not going to be good. They're heading down a deep, dark path that I don't like.
I'm
will
so
say-
depressed now.
Yeah.
I will
Sorry.
say, Brian, very consistently opposed to the regime led by Mark Shapiro.
Can I ask very quickly, did
Yeah.
either of you guys see the 60 Minutes interview with the Greek freak?
Yes, I did.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, you weren't watching the Stormy Daniels?
I saw. You know what happened? I taped 60 Minutes, and then they had the final 4 kind of overlap.
Went long, yeah.
So
That's
I only
right.
get parts. So I get.
The only
shorted
reason
on
I
that.
bring it up is, and you guys would know his story more than myself, but
Sure.
I didn't know much about him, but what a great story.
Great player.
Great player,
Yeah.
but just his upbringing and basically an unknown who kind of broke into the,
Him and
the
his
NBA.
brothers, when they were playing over in Greece at that rundown gym that they went over and showed you pictures of with the leaky faucets,
Yes.
they used to actually have to trade shoes because they only had one pair of shoes between them. So
kidding me.
one
Wow.
would come on, and the other one would have to sit down and take his shoes off. So
That's amazing.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty good stuff.
I just bring it up because I just thought it was a really cool,
Well, I think that's a segue, Brian, because now if we flip to the legal portion, Paul had, let's just talk about it. You had an affair with a porn star. She violated his non-disclosure agreement. Is that something your firm could kind of handle, or where do we go from that?
I often tell people that in case they're looking, yes, I did approach someone sexually many years ago, and there was an incident, and we ended up getting married. So
Okay.
I mean, I'm off the hook. All right?
I wasn't sure where you're going with that. I thought, whoa.
I'm off the hook.
Going
okay?
down the rabbit
She's
hole.
forgiven me. So
There you go. There you get a little Stormy Daniels in there for sure.
That's right.
Brian, you posted a blog, and your blogs always intrigue me. I read just about every single one of them, and I thought this one was really, really cool. I think it was posted late last week. The biggest mistakes that people make following car accidents, and I believe you listed 6 of them in particular.
6 in particular, but I want to talk about one today that I may or may not have covered. because a lot of people are kind of naive when it comes to witnesses after an accident. And a lot of people are naive when it comes to cameras capturing an accident. Everyone thinks that the camera is pointed right at their accident or right at the scene where they slipped and fell or right where, they get hit by a car. That's not the case. What happens more often than not is, one, the camera's not working. Two, it's not pointing in the right direction. Or three, it just doesn't capture it. Maybe there's a bird flying in front of it. Who knows? You know what I mean?
A Randy Johnson thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then when it comes to witnesses, everyone thinks, well, the police got the names and contact information of the witness, or my friend did, or everyone's relying on somebody else to do so. Or, yeah, there was a witness there and I'm automatically going to be able to track that person down afterwards. That's not the case. You got to find that person right away. And if you can't have your friend, family, or loved one find that person right away, get their name, contact number, phone number, email address, and any other phone numbers that they might have. Because if these witnesses vanish, which they often do, then you won't have any recourse in terms of calling them down the road or at trial or producing them for the insurance company to show that your version of the events corroborates with what the witnesses say. So be a bit proactive when it comes to that. Not everything is recorded on social media. Not everything is recorded on a video camera, and witnesses vanish and flee.
Before you arrived, Brian, Jordan and I were talking about what you were going to be talking about, and I went out on a limb and said that probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but probably the number one thing that you shouldn't do after an accident is very simple, and that's admit culpability to anybody.
Yeah, talk to a lawyer.
No, I mean to jump out of your car and just start going, "Oh, I'm sorry."
It's a natural reaction if you hit somebody to be apologetic, certainly.
I suppose.
But if the police are involved, and now we're getting to the realm of criminal and quasi-criminal matters, you can talk to a lawyer, and that's okay.
Do you have anybody in mind, Brian?
Especially when there are criminal charges involved. And I think I'm emphasizing more the realm of you've been charged with a criminal offense.
Right.
You should exercise that right to speak with a lawyer right away. I'm not that lawyer to do so because I'm not a criminal lawyer, but that's neither here nor there.
What would be some other tips for people who are in car accidents, Brian, and kind of how to...
In car accidents, insurance companies are going to call you right away. And especially if it's a big accident, and they're going to want to get your version of the events right away. And it's the same thing when I said call a lawyer in the event of a criminal offense. When the insurance company is pressuring you to give a statement or to sign forms, you can talk to a lawyer. I've seen insurance adjusters approach people who are in hospital and on all sorts of medication and cannot think straight. Say, sign here, sign here, sign here. Now let me hear your version of the events. And you can't give that proper version because your mind isn't straight, and they just want to get a recorded statement or some sort of written statement to essentially limit their liability for the case going forward, because they want to point to those documents down the road saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith signed this form or said this right after their accident. That is their clearest memory because it happened right after, and this is what they said. And that version of the events, because you were so hopped up on meds and you don't know where you were, won't corroborate with what you say after when you gain a clearer conscience.
Very interesting. Brian Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. When it comes to being the witness in this case, some witnesses are probably better than others. Like, what kind of questions end up getting asked of these people?
Of witnesses?
Yeah,
it's
witnesses,
very basic.
Yeah.
Very basic questions. Where were you? Where were you coming from? Where were you going to? What did you see? And perhaps how fast do you think the cars were going? Was there anything unusual in this situation? And just give your version of the events as clearly as possible. And then they'll ask you, was the impact a big impact, a medium impact, a light impact? Did you notice that anybody was injured? Was there anything, how were the weather and road conditions that day? Because they will want to corroborate everything that the defendant says and that the plaintiff says, because the witness has no skin in the game. They have nothing to lose and nothing to gain by telling the truth. Whereas a plaintiff and defendant, it's quite the opposite.
Sure.
One of the natural inclinations of people at an accident scene, whether they're involved in the accident, Brian, or a witness, is to help victims
Absolutely.
of the accident. But then we're kind of wading in the murky waters there, aren't we, in terms of who should be moved and if it could be a problem later on, if that resulted in more injury. Like, where do you kind of...
Do you remember the last episode of Seinfeld?
Yes.
When they all got arrested
Yes.
under the Good Samaritan laws of some obscure small town in some weird state? It reminds me of that. So there's no obligation. humans want to help other humans. So if you see somebody down and out, call 911 right away. And then you want to, people want to help people. I'm not a paramedic, but I've always heard from paramedics, don't touch somebody when they're down because you might re-injure them again. But certainly call the authorities and call 911. If you see somebody down and out who just got hit by a car, by all means, call an ambulance, call the police for that person. I wouldn't recommend moving them.
Maybe comfort them if you
comfort
can
them,
in any way.
absolutely.
Yep.
Be with them. If there's a blanket nearby, maybe put a blanket on them. But I wouldn't recommend kind of picking them up and moving them around. And then just basic things like that. But there are no good Samaritan laws in our country, unlike that Seinfeld episode.
Yeah.
Because I could probably get called up on that a couple of times.
Absolutely.
Brian Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. Brian, if anybody's interested in getting some more legal advice from you, how do they go about doing that?
They can visit my website at goldfingerlaw.com or certainly email me at Brian, Brian at goldfingerlaw.com.
Brian Goldfinger, thank you so much for stopping by, man. Always appreciate the conversation.
My pleasure, and have a happy and safe Easter long weekend to you and all of your listeners.
Thanks, Brian.
Fantastic. Thanks,
You
Brian.
too.
There we go.
You are a clever, resourceful man, Mr. Bond. Well, thank you. Perhaps too clever.
Yeah.
This is the best of the regulars on Talk Sports Radio, Extra 90.5.